What's going on, everybody? Patrick Auger here with Mr. Matthew Wells and Mr. Drake Riggs. And today we're talking about a topic that isn't covered as much as you might think. How does an up-and-coming fighter get into the UFC? What is the best path for that fighter? There's a lot of different options, a lot of different ways we've seen fighters come into the promotion, but what's the best way? What seems to be the most effective? There's a lot of choices here, a lot. Mr. Wells, why don't you take us through some that seem to make sense or that have worked out for fighters in the past?
I think the best path for a fighter to the UFC these days would be to go through promotions that they like to pull fighters from. The most obvious example for me is LFA. If you are an up-and-coming fighter and you can find a way to get on an LFA card, I think that is the best quote-unquote regional promotion to go through to get the attention of the UFC. Now, they're not the only one, but they are the one where a lot of the talent seems to come from. You know, they'd love to pull from that pool of fighters, and we've seen a lot of strong results from the LFA before that RFA, or before the merger there. So they obviously have a lot of ties with the UFC. Good fights, good competition. They're not gimme fights by any means. So if you can prove yourself on that stage, yeah, they'll take a look at you. The other option as well is figuring how to get on Dana White's Contender Series. That's literally the job right there. That's literally it. That's how you get the job interview. Figure out, get some wins on your regional circuit, which I know is hard to do in the pandemic times right now because a lot of shows in the regional areas aren't running. But get yourself a few wins at that stage. But I think we're assuming that this, fighter already has some wins under their belt, right? If you're an up and coming fighter, so you just got to figure out how to do that. And the best way to do that, I think, is obviously you gotta turn heads one way. Obviously it helps to be exciting. It helps to be a dynamic type of athlete because that's really what the UFC is looking for, right? They're not looking for a lay and pray sort of fighter, so to speak. Like, that's not really the style that they want. They want somebody that's going to go out there and try to finish fights. And obviously it helps if you can cut a good promo as well, but it doesn't need to be a full WWE. You just need to be interesting. So I think, to start off this conversation, I would say 1, LFA, 2, Dana White Contender Series.
Those are both good choices. I gotta correct you. The LFA is not a regional promotion. We have had LFA reach out to us to say it's not a regional promotion. They prefer a minor league, so to speak. So just letting you know there, which they do have fights all over the state. So it's, yeah. But anyway, I digress. LFA, if you look at any particular fight night card pay-per-view, you almost always see at least one LFA alumni, if not multiple, right? I forget, there was a span of time I did a piece a while back where it was something like 25 or 30% of fighters in the UFC for a particular stretch were all LFA alumni. And I believe this was when LFA had just ended their TV deal, and so they were looking for someone new, and how important that would be because they tend to have their fighters, especially champions, get called up all the time. And then you talk about Dana White Contender Series. Of course, we saw, especially this past year during the pandemic, that was a favorite for people to get signed from LFA, as well as several promotions all across the world. So those are two very good choices. Drake, are those the only two choices to look at here? And regardless of that, what is your favorite or think is the best way for a fighter to get into the UFC today?
Well, those two right there are really, probably the best answers you could give. And also, I would say for fighters looking to get in a promotion that helps them, become visible and everything, just see what's on Fight Pass. Because if you have that association with any of those organizations that are shown on Fight Pass, that helps. That definitely helps. And, just not to harp on everything Matt said just too much, I will switch to Invicta, which I think is incredibly proven on the women's side of things. And practically at this stage, an Invicta title is pretty much a UFC contract at this point. So if you look at, if you want to make a comparison to the LFA, with, of course they have women fighting in the LFA as well, but specifically with them, Invicta is pretty much that version of it. If you want to look at everyone that's on the UFC roster, it's more often than not, you're going to see Invicta alumni that are competing as well in the UFC, coming from their promotion that's been around since 2012, I believe. And some of the biggest names you can think of have fought there. Cyborg was there once. Marlis Kunin back in the day, never made the UFC, but good notable names and everything. They have that good connection. Invicta understands, the position they're in and are willing to play ball. So if you're a woman and, looking to get very visible, Invicta, and advance your career, you cannot go wrong with them. So,
yeah, Invicta, another great promotion in terms of translating from a championship belt or even contender status in Invicta, eventually getting called up to the UFC. And, one thing you mentioned there in terms of a guaranteed contract, a promotion that I feel like a lot of people have forgotten about, and it's not really advertised as much because there was an announcement about it and then it kind of died down, was M1 Global is another, where they literally have certain tournaments or things where it was, hey, you get a fight in the UFC. It was a UFC guaranteed contract. That can't be any clearer than that in terms of fighting for a promotion where then you have a door to the UFC. But all that being said, we've covered the biggest bases between LFA and Invicta. There's the M1 Global contract, but I love what Drake said about Fight Pass promotions, CFFC, Titan FC, all these guys out there that you can, EFC now, Eagle Fighting Championship with Habib. I'm sure that's going to yield a bunch of people. That's a great way as an up and coming prospect to get in there. One thing that I will add, since you guys covered pretty much the gamut of the really best ways to get into the promotion, is having a undefeated streak. The amount of times as someone that worked at SureDog, where on the Fight Finder side, where there would be emails from certain promoters saying like, hey, make sure you add this fight. And we had to go verify, did this fight actually happen? Is this a real thing? There are managers and there are coaches that will try to say that a fight happened that really didn't happen just so it bumps up their fighters' win streak. So they can say that they're 9-0 and 10-0 and say, hey, UFC signed me. Or they'll have people go out and fight in regional promotions that no one's ever heard of to accumulate those streaks. Then they get to the UFC and it's bad news. Dmitry Smolikov is my favorite example of that, who was, I think, 9-0, all by first round finish. And then, and Alexander Romanov has translated that into the UFC heavyweight division very well, but similar situation there where he was 10-0 on a promotion that was not widely covered, and he ended up making it work, but other times that doesn't happen. So I think that's another, getting an undefeated streak, even if you have a couple of decisions in there, if you can stretch something together long enough, you probably will end up getting the attention of the matchmakers one way or another. So with that being said, before we wrap it up, make sure you like this video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, the notification button, so that you know when we're dropping informative videos like this. Boys, is there anything that I'm leaving out or anything you want to add in terms of a fighter finding the best path to the premier mixed martial arts organization?
Yes, I would like to add, obviously, if you're able to, train at a major gym. That will help so much just by being around other fighters that are in the UFC. Like if you can find your way to a Jackson Wink, if you can find your way to an ATT, if you're in the DFW area, Fortis MMA, shout out. If you can find yourself in a gym with a lot of other UFC talent, not only will you get better as a fighter, but you will also be around people that will put your name in the ear of the people that matter. So that is one of the huge things that can help you get noticed quicker. Obviously, of course, we're assuming that you're going out there and taking care of business when you actually have a fight that counts as well.
It's true. A good gym always helps. And of course, we can't forget Tough, Ultimate Fighter, man, coming back. That's an audition. I didn't think about it till the end here now. I mean, that's literally, they have a tryout that says, hey, come sign up. And a lot of times, if you are not even the winner of the Ultimate Fighter, they may end up, if they like you, calling you up for short notice fights and things of that nature. So that's another option as well. But love the gym comment. I think that's probably more relevant than the return of Tough. So sorry, I tried.